Hi guys, welcome back to the channel for another video. Today I am answering all of your questions about what it is like to share your recovery online, the highs, the lows, the positives, the negatives. Would I do it all again? What are my regrets? Is it all worth it? And I think that I get asked these questions a lot because the recovery community over however many years has gone from like a teeny tiny corner on Tumblr to this amazing network of experiences and representations and stories, and more people feel like they want to share their story. So I understand the interest. So I don't know if this is spilling tea. I don't really understand the definition of that phrase because I hear so many variations of it. So you tell me throughout this video if this is tea, but I'm going to be very, very honest about my experience and hopefully you get something out of it, even if you're just curious about what it is like and my thoughts on the kind of behind the scenes stuff. Before we get into that, the course that I mentioned in last week's video, the Conquer Your Eating Disorder Voice workshop that I'm holding at the end of January, definitely going to be running that again because of the amount of interest that I've had. If you missed out on tickets and you would like to attend future workshops, it's probably going to be run again in about 6 to 8 weeks. Please click the link in the description box below to add your name and email address to the wait list so that when the dates come around again and the tickets are available, you will be the first to find out before they even go live. So don't miss out on that. Head to the link below. So I asked you guys on Instagram what your questions were about what it's like to run a recovery account or share something so personal publicly, which I still sometimes go, why did I do that? And yeah, I'm just going to give you all the info. Spill the tea, as it were. Maybe, I'm not sure, someone help. So first question, did it feel like coming out when you went public about your recovery? I can't say because I'm not part of the LGBT community, so I can't really make the comparison, but it was very, very nerve-wracking. I didn't start making videos for any other purpose than this is where I could record videos after I came back from my psychologist sessions to sort of do a brain dump about what I'd learned and what realizations I'd come to and the things we'd worked on for me to reflect back on. And I would then reshare it to my Tumblr, which was like this digital recovery journal that I created for myself over there with photos I loved of cities I wanted to travel to and all these motivational things to get better and quotes, etc. And I think within like the first 6 months of this being a thing on the internet, a channel, there were like 50 to 100 people here. The point was never subscribers, numbers, views. That was kind of a byproduct. So then when it started to pick up, it was like by year 2 or 3 of the channel, I had like 3,000 or 4,000 subscribers, and I made a What Mia Did Next Instagram. And people I knew found that, and they would add me and I would panic and I would block them and then try to pretend that wasn't redundant because Mia, they've already seen it, and you're not Will Smith in Men in Black where you can just like zap people's memories and make them forget. So I was still very ashamed, very embarrassed, and it wasn't until I was doing some fundraising for the Butterfly Foundation and I wanted people's money. So I wrote about my experience and put it up on Facebook, was absolutely like sweating bullets when I hit publish, and the response was incredible. People were so supportive and encouraging. There was not one negative bit of feedback or anything. People messaging me saying, I've been through it, or a family member's been through it. Thank you for sharing that so publicly. And that was one of the big early lessons that I got about the power of vulnerability, and that vulnerability is strength and connection is essential when you have a mental illness which is so steeped in isolation and shame, that when you shine light on that darkness, it's like, oh, there's nothing there. There's nothing to be ashamed of. Very nerve-wracking, but at the end of the day, very, very worth it. And now obviously something I'm so proud of. Like when I meet people or I run into people who I went to school with or whatever, they're so interested and so kind about it. And that still kind of freaks me out that it's weird to think that like someone from school is watching this potentially, or an ex-boyfriend. Josie's always like, you do realize that like your ex-boyfriends absolutely watch the occasional video. And I'm like, please just, no, shut your face, Josie. That's not helpful. Like, let me live in my ignorant land where only strangers are watching. So next question, advice for someone thinking about documenting recovery on YouTube but feeling hesitant. I would really spend some time unpacking why you're feeling hesitant. If you have a treatment team, like a psychologist, a coach, really bounce it off them about your reasoning for wanting to share your recovery experience publicly. And I think a really good barometer for unpacking why you are feeling hesitant is to ask yourself a couple of questions. One, if you were to upload a video on your recovery every week for a year and it didn't get a single view or a single like, would you still feel motivated to do it? If you were to upload something on Instagram every day for 6 months and it never had engagement, would you still feel motivated to do it? If the answer is yes, then it's quite likely that, expressing that and putting it out there and shining light on it in a very public way could help your process. If the answer is no, then it's worth it to look at, maybe I'm doing this for external validation, for likes, for views, which is a slippery slope when you have an eating disorder that is likely numbers focused, potentially looking for affirmation and validation externally, where part of the recovery process is about finding that from yourself. I was very lucky in that sense. No one was watching. Nobody cared. That's a good way to unpack why. I would also consider a few things, and I will lead into the next question with the most important thing, which is, how have you emotionally dealt with trolls, thinking of starting a YouTube and nervous about that? I think that's the majority of what people are concerned about, is trolling and trolling happens. There's a couple of different kinds of trolling. On one level, out and out abuse, just somebody saying horrible things about you, and that can and likely will happen. In the 7 years that I've been on this platform, I have been called every name under the sun you can think of, and every combination and variation. I have had everything said about my appearance, everything, even things that are so creative, abusive but creative, that I even go like, oh my God, like the effort that went into that. I'm a little impressed, obviously being facetious there, but things will be said to you by people who literally just want to like put a bomb under you essentially and just disrupt you as much as possible. Funnily enough, that trolling over time, you just kind of like become numb to it because it's just so outlandish and so outrageous you can't take it personally. The kind of trolling that can sort of like get to you and where I would become concerned for somebody is, and especially in this community, when you've been around for long enough, you tend to start to recognize this pattern and this pattern of behavior from certain individuals. And this community is small enough to see that they do it not only to you, but to other people who share their recovery publicly. People who kind of go around with the specific intention of like not throwing a bomb, but just like chipping, like just taking chunks out of people. And funnily enough, that's the kind of stuff where it's quite wearing because it's not so obviously abusive that you feel more like you need to engage with it. And I've learned over the years, if it feels like someone is just repeatedly coming back to your account to take a chunk out of you, you have every right to block them, to mute them, whatever you're going to do. So I just do that indiscriminately now. And you'll get to know it, and the sooner you jump on it, the better. There are people who have been following me for years who every time they get the opportunity to take a chunk, they do. But when things happen, like my dad dies or like my grand dies, there's never a, sympathetic, supportive comment. So you have to be prepared to make peace with the fact that not everyone's going to like you. There will be people who are hate following you, who literally subscribe to you, get the notification for your video, and then give it a thumbs down. Truly, which thanks for the subscription and thanks for the engagement. But the behavior is baffling more than anything, and it is something that you get used to, and then you just have your own tolerance policy of like, oh, this person, every time they're not abusive enough that I remember what they say, but I remember how they make me feel. As soon as you get that inkling, just like you have permission to remove anyone from your community. If they wouldn't behave like that in your house, they don't have the right to behave like that on your social media, if that's what you decide. It's just about recognizing that not everyone's going to like you, and that your job on this earth is not to be liked. And if you want to be an advocate and you want to make change, then you have to be able to sort of sacrifice the idea that you're going to be liked by everyone in order to make real change and to progress forward. It can also be very intense in that sense that, you are in a community of people who are likely not terribly well, a lot of them, but that doesn't excuse bad behavior. I remember somebody left some great wisdom on a video a couple of years ago, and they were like, Mia, I think in every video where somebody's been awful to you, you make so many excuses for them. Have you ever considered the fact that maybe, yes, they have an eating disorder, but they might be an a-hole with an eating disorder, that even if they didn't have an eating disorder, they still wouldn't be a great person. I was like, oh my God, you just changed my whole life. Next question, did this give you pressure to have a perfect recovery without relapses or setbacks? Because it wasn't planned, not really, until I was a couple of years in and I had a little bit of a wobble where I, was talking about the fact that I had a return to eating disorder thoughts and patterns were kind of creeping back in, not behaviors, but just some early stages of what could have been a relapse. And I was very hesitant to share it because there was a community here now, 3,000 or 4,000 of you. And I was really, really scared to let everybody down. And my sister really encouraged me to be honest about it. And I'm so glad that I was, because it showed me that I could be really transparent and honest, that the majority of people, sort of as a two-parter to the question before, the majority of people here are so beautiful and so supportive and so loyal. Like so many people who have been here from day one, which blows my mind and is such an honor and privilege that you have stuck around here and contributed to this community as much as you have. I was really glad that I did that because it's really set me up to be able to be honest about my dad's cancer diagnosis, about my PTSD after he passed away, about when I get my heart broken, all kinds of things that maybe I would have been hesitant to if I hadn't shared something like that in such, an early stage of this being a channel or a community. So thank you for allowing me to do that. But no, I don't feel like I had to do it perfectly. But you have to remember, I always had a policy from day one that I wasn't going to do like what I eat in a days or share anything that was like too prescriptive where people could kind of get that much of a look in on what I was doing with the food, mostly because I just didn't think it was helpful to you guys, which with the feedback from the community over the last few years, that kind of rings true, that seeing all my food wouldn't have been helpful for you and it wouldn't have been helpful for me either. Is there anything you regret sharing? I do always remember that there was a video, and I think I've taken it down. There was a video where I casually mentioned my clothing size, like when I was unwell and then when I'd recovered, and not that there's any excuse for it, but I was just doing the comparison that like my clothing size didn't change that much, which from my perspective was showing, that I don't know what point I was trying to make. But anyway, it clearly wasn't a good idea because people were, a little bit annoyed at me and very rightly so for sharing such a specific number about my size when I'd, always been a channel that was kind of free of that. And I felt very badly and was very apologetic. And it really taught me a lot about just being careful, just being mindful. And especially in the editing process, just if you get like a little glimmer of that might not be helpful, always err on the safe side and just get it out of there, and to listen to the community. If the community is saying this isn't helpful, before and afters aren't helpful, numbers aren't helpful, you can keep blindly just be like, I just want to, knowing it's harming a lot of people, not all, but enough that maybe that should be taken into consideration. It really taught me to listen to you guys rather than just be like, I wanna. So I've always been very grateful for that kind of like two-way street that we've had. Great follow-up question. Do you ever feel like you have to word things perfectly or else you'll be criticized? Absolutely. I don't feel like that. I know it's like that. And look, on one hand, that's how it should be. I'm making public statements about something incredibly sensitive, incredibly dangerous. I have to be open to what is and isn't helpful. Even on my Patreon this past week, I received some feedback from a patron about something not eating disorder related, but a phrase that I used that went totally over my head that it would be unhelpful for certain people. And it was like, oh yeah, like totally get that. There's been things where, I made a post on Instagram about, access to food and not having any excuse for not eating. And somebody was like, economically, that's not true for some people. And I was like, hell yeah, thank you. I'm an ignorant, privileged idiot, and I'm so grateful for that. When it's said respectfully and in a measured way, and you can tell it's not just that tone of like, here's another like pin in the voodoo doll, then you can take it on board because you can tell it's genuinely coming from a place of like, we want this whole community to be as inclusive and respectful and effective and productive as it can be. But it's just you just know when it's part of a constructive conversation and when it's just, again, you're just having a chunk taken out of you. But you've just got to back yourself as well. You're going to be criticized all the time. I'm criticized for my approach a lot, especially with things like response videos where there's never anything personal. There's never any kind of, character assassination. And I will be told if I don't respond to something and something's going on in the community, I'm bombarded with messages being like, why aren't you talking about this? And it must be because of this and it must be because of that. And, you're a bad advocate for not responding. If I do respond and I name the person, you shouldn't name the person. That's wrong. If I don't name the person, I just allude to it. You're a coward and you should give this person an opportunity to respond to you, and you're not naming them so they can't respond. You can't win, right? You just cannot win. And the sooner you give that up, that idea, like people liking you, futile, pointless, waste of your energy. You have to be able to back yourself and say, I can't win, but I believe in this enough, and I have to measure all of that up and take stock of all of that. And change does happen. Change is made. People change their direction or consider how they phrase things. I've done it as per what I just shared with you before. Change is made. That's what makes it worthwhile. And if I'm going to be criticized, I'm going to be criticized. Like, it's just, what is it, a Tuesday? Just another day of the week? Have you met any YouTube subscribers in person? I absolutely have. And it has been some of the most incredible moments of my life, particularly, if I'm doing speaking events for Butterfly, or, I get asked to speak on a panel, and, subscribers will show up, and that is such an honor. Sometimes they come with their parents and their sisters, and, like a whole family who turned up at something, and were like, we watch your videos all together. That still to this day brings me to tears, and I go home and in person I'm like, oh my God, it's so lovely to meet you. And then I go home and I just like lean on the shower wall and just like, because it's that's the real stuff, right? Like when you go, wow, this is more than just talking to people through a screen. This is really serious stuff, and really sensitive, and it's about people's lives. And it's just a huge honor and privilege for people to let you into their process and their lives and their families like that. It's massive. I've also met Bins, who's one of my moderators, because she's been such a supporter, and in, this community, she is an absolute legend. And met her when she came up to Sydney, and it was fabulous. Loved being able to finally sit down and have a cup of tea with her. How do you feel about inexperienced people giving advice online? Suffice it to say, it's not my favorite. It's not my favorite for reasons I'm not going to go into depth with, because I think as soon as we start this debate about are qualifications important, then we've just lost the plot a little bit. It would be like a friend came to me and said, I can either go to a heart surgeon who is qualified and trained and isn't just using their own experience in their own area of interest, but have been specifically trained in different skills and techniques, and how to work with all different kinds of diagnoses and all different kinds of experiences. Or I can go to somebody who has had heart surgery and takes an interest in it, and now they're a surgeon. I know who I would tell my friend to work with. So I think we're in an age of, rejecting qualifications and, rejecting authority. And that's fair enough, but eating disorders are so incredibly deadly. And my belief in the importance of qualifications doesn't just come from some philosophical belief. It's now, as a coach, I see the aftermath of people coming to me who have gone to unaccredited, unqualified individuals, and there is a significant amount of damage that can be done because there's no quality control, there's no oversight, there's no training, there's no standard of care, no one's culpable, no one's responsible. So if you end up in the hands of somebody who has no training, there is no one there to take responsibility for that and what happens to you. Right? So very important to do your research, very important to find, yes, someone who's accredited and good at their job. Just because someone is qualified or accredited doesn't mean they're good at their job. Certainly not saying that. But having that base requirement of they have had adequate training to be able to treat you, plus they're good at their job, those two are a good combo, but this one really essential. It's also frustrating as a coach who has spent the time and the energy and the training doing, Carolyn Costin's course, which is rigorous. I am not exaggerating, and every, CCI coach will tell you the same. The training is rigorous. There is supervision. You do an internship. Carolyn is supervising your sessions with clients. It is very frustrating to then see unaccredited coaches and people who, I was sent a couple of them this week, who are in recovery and still offering coaching. It's like having a sober coach who is still in their addiction. I mean, it just, that's what I mean by quality control. If I were to relapse or something were to go seriously wrong, then there would be something to fall back on. There's a system and a process to make sure everybody is safe. Do you ever get self-conscious about what you look like being on camera so much? I did back in the day, for sure. When I was disordered and I was on camera, even though nobody was here, I was very, very preoccupied. The only time since then that I became preoccupied was last year. You guys might have seen the video where I shared how much I was struggling with PTSD and anxiety at the time, and I couldn't film. I couldn't get a sentence out. I was very, very self-conscious. I was fidgety. I'd get fixated on how my clothes were sitting and, was my lipstick on okay? And now it's like a 2-minute makeup job, if anything at all. And to be perfectly honest with you guys, I went for a very sweaty walk today and I haven't showered. I just changed my top, put some concealer on and a bit of lipstick. And I don't probably smell great. No, I'm kidding. This is very sweet. When you started, did you ever expect to have such an impact? I think that former answers have covered this, but absolutely not. It was the happiest accident of my life. The fact that it turned into advocacy, that I've been able to connect. Like, I have people in my life now, like Millie Thomas, one of my best friends. We've never met in person. One of my best friends, like a soulmate, and all these people I've been introduced to through this, and my career, my business, all the opportunities that I've been given. And, I wanted to be a journalist. I wanted to share stories. I wanted to fight for the underdog. That's always been my thing. And that's why I was drawn to journalism. I wanted to be an investigative journalist. And I kind of get to do that. I get to create. I get to tell stories. I get to be my own boss and steer my own ship. So I'm very, 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 very grateful. Do you find it scary to be vulnerable in front of followers? At times. I think you can see at certain times that I've hesitated to share things with you, particularly like my PTSD diagnosis, because that was just very hard for me to accept myself, that, what happened to my dad was so awful for him and for all of us, that it had that impact on me. But you just keep proving to me over and over again that, again, strength is vulnerability and connection is essential. And final question, has it been worth it? Is it exhausting? It's absolutely been worth it. There's highs and lows to everything. There's good and bad to everything. I have no regrets about this channel. I say to my mum all the time when we're talking about business opportunities and expanding the business or cool things I get to do or people I get to meet, and I say, do you remember the days when you call me and be like, just explain to me again, what are these videos that you're making? So you just got to go with your instinct. That's what I tell. That's probably the biggest piece of advice that I can give you, whether it's about this, wanting to start a channel, wanting to share your recovery, or otherwise. You've got to go with your instinct. I just know it felt good and right and empowering, and it felt like it gave to my recovery. It didn't take away. And then what we've built here is because of you. If I were just here doing it, it's not a community. A community isn't made of one person. And like I said earlier, there are people who've been here since 7 years ago. And I'm grateful to everyone, the OGs and anybody who's turned up since and made this the insightful, intelligent, kind, compassionate, discerning, analytical, hilarious place that it is. I'm so proud. I don't know why this was meant to be spilling tea and now it's like an episode of Oprah. I hope that gave you a bit of insight, bit of background. If you were curious or wanting to do it yourself, the best piece of advice I can give is follow your instinct, but also, yes, your lived experience is incredibly valuable. So in whatever measure you feel you can or you want to share and it feels safe to and it feels like it's going to benefit you, please do. We need so much more representation. We need so much more diversity and so many more voices out there. So go for it. In the meantime, take care of yourselves. Much love. Happy 2021. New Year is not a miracle cure for 2020, but I certainly have a strong sense of hope, and I hope that you do too. Much love. Take care. Bye, guys.